You can't handle the truth. Truth.
Good morning, beautiful people. We are live.
Good morning, and risings. It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton, Sonia Poulton, Sonia Poulton, Sonia Poulton.
Good morning and grand risings to you, you beautiful, beautiful people. Crazy Bunny, yeah, it worked. Absolutely, it did. Welcome to, where are we? Welcome to Wake Up with Sonia Poulton and guests. I was just going to say something completely different. I don't know why. Good morning and grand rising. As Worthy on X said, it seems like only a couple of days since I last saw you. I do love the sense of humor about our commenters. I'm all over the place this morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Wake Up. It's Valentine's Day in the Western world, the day traditionally known for romance. Well, I say if you have to reserve romance for one day, then it's not romantic at all. Not at all. Of course, like many of these historic days, it's been taken over by consumerism, and shops are full of red plastic balloons and heart-shaped chocolate and furry toys. It's almost like the Western world sees romance as a childish, disposable thing that is best reserved for one day only to keep the plebs happy. But I don't. So welcome to the show that wholeheartedly not only believes in the magic of love, but bakes it into every broadcast. Oh, yes, indeed we do. I agree, Sonia, 30 billion industry, says Dr. Robert, not a doctor. Indeed. Good morning, all. How are you all? Welcome to Wake Up, which why am I keep wanting to call it something else? It's because we introduced a new show. I hate romantic movies, says Randy, which is odd, Randy, because how many of our female guests have you taken to? Oh, I see. Well, the romantic movies are just kind of rubbish, aren't they? Good morning, Silly says, and Howard, and Anne-Marie, and Short Order Cook, and Carly, and Healing the Silence, and Benny. Good morning to you all. And Curly Crew is not happy. Says, pray for me as I take on the education system again. A transformer. Interesting word. Taught assembly yesterday and basically just danced and spoke about periods and being a woman. I'm fuming. Presumably it was a man pretending to be a woman, Curly Crew. Take them on, Curly Crew. Take them on and take them down. Good morning, Martin. I like true stories, said ex-Bialadocious. Me too. And Vape King, how are you this morning? How are you all? And hello, Ian and GCR. Good morning, grand risings to everyone. Let's hope I don't keep forgetting the title of our show. So who is joining me today on Wake Up? Well, original Rotherham whistleblower Jayne Sr. will be with us. She is one of the most significant voices at the heart of a UK scandal. That is the industrial scale grooming of young girls. And former soldier, latter-day writer, and something of a philosopher, Johnny McNeil, aka Gaslighting Gilligan, will be here with us after 10, analysing Trump's pronouncements and talking about emotional capture. I'm looking forward to that. And what's on my radar today? So much, people, so much. Good morning, Beth. How are you? Good morning, darling. I want to look at a number of things, including the Munich car attack. Tulsi Gabbard makes the grade to be the new director of intelligence in the US, as does RFK Jr. as the director of America's health. I've been impressed with Tulsi, as people know. Of course, there are some people who will always believe that it's all scripted, but actually, I don't think it is. I really actually don't. That's too simplistic an explanation for our massively complex world. I am in no doubt that some people are compromised, but scripted, nah, not happening. Plus, I want to talk sellouts, LL Cool J, and Pfizer shots. Really, James? Really, James? And what about the bromance between Musk and Trump? That cannot last. No way, absolutely not. And I'll tell you why I think that. And I see that Keir Starmer has been pushing his society-destroying 15-minute cities yesterday. New towns are about building communities, not just houses, he says. This is absolutely ridiculous. Since Margaret Thatcher, we've only built 250,000 new council houses, right? And that is what we need. We need new social housing, not these 15-minute cities, which are really about sort of enslaving us and keeping us in the one area. Stormzy, Lisa, do not talk to me about Stormzy. What a sellout. What a sellout. So let me see. He sold out his principles for 9 chicken nuggets at McDonald's. Am I right? And then he'd put up a post on Instagram, hadn't he, previously, said, you know, sort of pro-Palestine, kind of like their fight is my fight kind of vibes. And then because obviously McDonald's and Israel. And so Stormzy is now, obviously, he's got his chicken nuggets that are going through McDonald's. And what did he do? He took down his Palestine post. He took down his Palestine post. Unbelievable. Good morning, Jacqueline. How are you? And good morning. Yes, good morning, one and all. Who is Stormzy? Stormzy was somebody that I had great hopes for back in 2017, 2018. Actually, one of the greatest performances on the Brits, when he did a performance where he was really, he was actually speaking truth to power. He was talking about the problems around Grenfell and what had happened, and David Cameron, Theresa May, and that was when Stormzy was at his absolute best. Yes, but now he's selling chicken nuggets for McDonald's, as you do. And assisted dying in England and Wales. Don't anyone tell me we did not see this coming. We saw it coming. The laughing assassin. The laughing assassin. You know who I'm talking about, aka MP Kim Ledbetter, who's pushing for England and Wales to legalise assisted suicide. And she started moving the goalposts already of her proposals. Now she wants to replace judges with experts. What experts would that be? Experts like propaganda merchant Esther Ranson, maybe? This was after Ledbetter had assured people of the importance of judges in this ruling. However, because she'd previously said that having the involvement of the High Court was part of 3 layers of scrutiny that made it, in her words, the strongest, most robust piece of legislation on this issue in the world. Well, that seems to have gone out of the window, and it will keep going out of the window, because the point about Kim Ledbetter and her handlers and the people who are financially backing this bill is they want this bill to go through by hook or by crook. And if they can convince you of one thing at the beginning, they will have changed it by the end. What do we think the real reason is why they are trying to push the assisted dying bill? Marco wants to know. Give us your thoughts, people. Yes, Abster, chicken sodding nuggets, for God's sake. Right, mass media propaganda, Netflix's apple cider vinegar and ITV's Unforgotten. I watch them so you don't have to, but I did it because millions of others are, and we should know what they are being fed, and I'll talk about that a bit later. And what I want to get off of my chest, Zoe R. Mod gave me a 1-minute rant about spiritual grifters, which I will play at the end of the show, and it's a corker. It's a corker. It really is. How are you all? Eugenics, Fabians, bloody love it, says Cassandra. I agree. Waterboarding. Depopulation is the reason, says Tim Ford. What are we talking about? Waterboarding. What's going on? I've missed that bit. Yay, rant. And lovely Deborah wrote to me about that 1-minute rant. And I'm going to read what she said later, because she made a really valid point. And the thing is I'm always open to intelligent viewpoints. If people have a valid point to make to me, constructive criticism, I'm all in. And I'm going to tell you what she said later. Right, US affairs. So, interesting times, people. Interesting times. I wonder if I've got an image to... There we go. So, run of high-profile confirmations for Trump's administration this week. RFK Jr. yesterday, and honestly, what Donald Trump said was some of the finest things I want to hear being done regarding our health. He talked about the significant increase in autism and in chronic health, and he rightly said something has gone wrong, very wrong. RFK, so he's in as director of health, pedal to the metal time, people. He's in a position to change the long-term health of America and by extension, the world. Will he? He himself was found to have conflicting financial interests when part of the committee hearings for his role as health secretary. His compromise was to transfer it to a family member. Oh, how we laughed. Anyway, he's in. People have high hopes riding on him, and I'm one of them. And if they truly follow this through, what they were saying yesterday at the swearing in, I was like, yes. And the thing is, I've literally never heard a world leader talk the way that Trump was talking about chronic health and autism. I've never have. Or about challenging the status quo about healthcare. I've never heard any world leader talk like that. I haven't. So if he follows it through, it's going to be boom. It's going to be boom. So the thing is what is happening in America is actually capable of changing the way society thinks about medicine. I mean, that's a fact. America has tremendous influence over the rest of the world. And that ranges across all subjects, from censorship to healthcare. So this really could be a key turning point. It really could. But the question is, will Big Pharma and the people that they handle within the American administration allow it? That is what we've yet to find out, isn't it? And then Tulsi Gabbard was confirmed as Director of Intelligence. Again, a great choice. Now let's see what she's going to do in office. The release of files regarding JFK and Martin Luther King are great. But what about the ones closer to home for Trump, such as Jeffrey Epstein and COVID? Both scenarios Trump has been involved with. He had a relationship with Epstein and spent a significant period with him as two lustful men on the American business scene. That's what they were. They partied together. They had a good time together. And Trump was also involved in speeding up the process to get C-19 jabs quickly to market. That's also a reality, Operation Warp Speed. He's proud of it. But many of us have long known it's not something to be proud of. So until we have complete transparency of the things that may also involve the president, I will be cautious and see it as them releasing to us the information that no longer matters, such as RFK shooting being an inside hit job. We all knew. And it looks increasingly like the likelihood was that it was two shooters rather than one confused Lee Harvey Oswald, that poor fall guy. And remember Jack Ruby as well, the scenario there. Four guys. What are your thoughts? I mean, that's true, Emma. I'm not implying for a second that Trump is a nonce. I'm not. I'm just saying that we need the release of everything for complete transparency. What's that? Rock Lover is talking about early 20, a Cullivar most vulnerable. Absolutely. Good morning, IBR and fellow Poultonites. Good morning to you all. And we talked briefly on Wednesday about this press conference, this bizarre press conference in the Oval Office. And I talked primarily really about kind of Musk taking his son to work, but obviously a lot more has come out about it now. What a bromance that is between Trump and Musk, eh? And Musk announced on X last week how much he loves Trump. Well, I'm here to say that the fallout will be immense, and it's coming. There is no way on earth that these two are going to keep tolerating each other. Trump's body language in the Oval Office was just about bearing Musk, just about bearing him. Elon wants the world to know he has the power, and Donald Trump is not someone to be usurped by anyone, including the billionaire who bought his way onto the Trump team. The fallout is going to be epic, absolutely epic, as one tweeter described it. And I have to agree, the exploits in the White House this week with Musk's son, little X, was so revealing, so very, very revealing. So Musk was in the Oval Office. He was completely against all forms of protocol, including the way that he dressed. He took his child with him. He's an unelected person. And there was a hot mic which revealed rather a lot of insight into what little X's father might actually think about President Trump. Elon Musk knows he's bought his way into power. In order for Trump not to look like a fraud or to lose credibility for allowing a previously woke climate agenda pushing billionaire to have been able to do this, Trump has to keep repeating the mantra that Musk is a genius, but most of us know he's not. You only have to listen to Musk for a few minutes to know he's an inarticulate mess much of the time and is clearly under the influence of something or other. He's admitted to taking ketamine regularly. He says lots of things, made lots of money, but I don't believe for a second he's a genius. The thing is, business people like Trump often call someone a genius if they've bought their way into a company. It's an old tactic to hide the fact that they've been bought. So Musk was in the Oval Office talking about all the outrageous money Biden's administration had been spending on madnesses such as condoms for far-flung countries and money to media outlets all over the world, including Reuters, for large-scale social deception. That's literally what it says on the receipt. As commentator Jeff Peel pointed out, the social deception started during Trump's first term. The Trusted News Initiative was launched in September 2019 and was created in anticipation of the COVID scam. The BBC, Twitter, and Reuters were all members. The Trusted News Initiative was a deep state propaganda unit that coordinated the COVID fear campaign under Trump and under Biden. And you wondered why so much of the media, which takes much of its journalism from Reuters as a central source for information, sounded like it had been pulled from the backsides of the globalists. Well, that's because arch globalists in the Biden administration and in the Trump administration were funding it from taxpayer money. All part of the same thing. The American government has been funding mass propaganda against people worldwide, and everyone involved should be exposed. However, we cannot also lose sight of the fact that the man given the job of making these cuts is an unelected immigrant to the US who quite literally bought his way into his influential and powerful position next to Trump. And there's rather a lot of questions that need to be asked about Musk's finances. Right? Because while Musk and Trump have Americans and the world focused on cutting waste to senior citizens, just like Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer in the UK, with the first cut being to pensioners' winter fuel allowance. But Congressman Greg Casar exposed yesterday that while Musk is focused on pensioners who were given $65 a day to survive, Musk's army of companies are receiving $8 million a day from the US government for a battery of contracts. Who is auditing this special relationship? Anyone? Anyone? Added to which, as pointed out by Berkeley professor Robert Reich, when Trump was sworn in, Elon Musk's corporations were under more than 32 investigations conducted by at least 11 federal agencies. Most of the cases are now closed or likely to be closed soon, and the federal agencies are being defanged by DOJ being the department that Musk is overseeing. So we need transparency all ways round. Who is auditing Musk? Well, he's auditing America. But I want to go back to my point, and that is the fallout between Musk and Trump. It's going to be epic, and it will happen, of that I'm certain. For one, Musk is doing and saying things that are in absolute opposition to Trump's words. Did anybody see Musk at he was on, as you can see, this is a Dubai conference, the World Government Summit in Dubai. It was absolutely ram-packed with Muslims, and Musk told them that America has a habit of getting involved with other countries' business and should butt out. He included in this, Matt, such as forced regime change. But what about Trump's threats to Hamas for this weekend? That if they do not comply with returning all hostages by midday Saturday, all hell will break loose. What about Trump telling the world that he can just move Palestinians out of Palestine because he's going to make it a nice Riviera type place? So again, Musk is acting against and outside of Trump, and that cannot last indefinitely. And by the way, little X gave away so many clues, and that will almost certainly hasten the downfall of this relationship between Musk and Trump. And out of the mouth of babes, I mean, there's the difference of opinion of what Musk's child was actually saying, but it looks increasingly like he was, some people believe that he was telling Trump to shut up. Others believe that he was telling Trump to shush. Others believe he was telling Trump that you're not the president. And where did Lil X get this information? Small children repeat what they've heard. This kid has heard his daddy talk about buying influence over the president. And that's what Elon being in the Oval Office this week showed us, right? I'm so powerful. I'm so influential over this administration that I can conduct a press office in the Oval Office with my child who tells the actual president, voted for by the people, to do one. This is curious. This is curious. What do you think? What do you people think? You need to shush your mouth, Mel's thinks. I think that's what a lot of people think he actually said. So it's interesting. A lot of people also believe that Elon uses this child as a prop. Elon's dad, I was watching an interview with Elon's dad yesterday, also a poor dad by all accounts. But Elon's dad was saying that Elon is a dreadful father, that he's always had multiple nannies for all his children. Each child has always had one nanny each. And when Elon was separating from one of his partners, there were 6 nannies for the children. How confusing is that? Yes, Jan. Well, he is powerful. He's audited all the money being stolen from the Americans. Now, who is going to audit Elon Musk? That's the question. Craig said, little X will grow up a well-balanced young man. Not. Did you also see the interview where Musk was with Tucker Carlson, and this was like hours before the election was called, and little X was basically saying that they'd already called it. What? I do not agree with people putting children in the limelight. It's wrong, says Crazy Bunny. Yeah, he puts a target on his child's head and makes him open to criticism, which is not nice, really. It's not pleasant. It's not really a good thing. And well, Wednesday's first wake up, right? Set the cat amongst the pigeons. Had lots of comments. Almost all of them happy, but one or two were not. Karen was happy. She wrote to me, morning, Sonia. Well done on Wednesday's show launch. You were bang on sharing the word of those we would maybe not gravitate towards. There is more that unites us than divides us. Though Trump's pastor pushed my buttons, but every bit of exposure helps strengthen the awakening. Keep going. And thank you, Karen. I really appreciate that. I think it's really important that we should be allowed to disagree. I made clear to Trump's pastor, Pastor Mark Burns, that I disagreed with his stance on Gaza. But this is not a shouty Piers Morgan type show, right? I believe it's really important to give people space so that they can either redeem themselves or damn themselves, right? I am not going to enforce my opinion on anybody. That's not what we're doing around here, okay? Because I also know as a seasoned interviewer that if you allow people to talk without the fear of being shouted down, they will reveal far more than if you confront them throughout the conversation. And what the pastor actually revealed was some of the thinking that exists around the president of the United States. And that is invaluable to know, because whether you like it or not, the US is so powerful that when it burps, leaders around the world rush to cover its mouth. But also, just to say, he is a church pastor who believes in the Bible strongly. I do not claim to be a Bible scholar, and I'm not in a position to debate him about Bible either. Not that I would. If people want to believe the Bible, or any book for that matter, who are we to tell them they shouldn't, that they are wrong, that we are absolutely right? I'm not that arrogant. But some of the purity spiralists who insist their view is the only one believe that they are absolutely right. But I want to take this moment to manage the expectations of some people and what they can and cannot expect from Wake Up. Some people already get it. I've had more emails and social media messages saying it was great to hear him speak freely. And that was mostly from people who also disagreed with his biblical stance on Gaza. But there are others who only want me to abuse my guests. The reality is that some people watch these shows and they won't be happy unless I denigrate and humiliate certain guests. And that's not who I am. And that's not what I will provide around here. I do not take my guests for granted. It takes something to get in front of a camera, unscripted, and to have a conversation. And I acknowledge the person who does that. Many of the critics online are anonymous. They are not prepared to stand up even behind their own identity. They are doing nothing while shouting at those who are doing something to go faster and do more. This is not a criticism at those who choose to be anonymous online. There are some legit reasons for doing so, but there are also others who criticize behind anonymity because they are cowards and wouldn't do it in real life. And also they may be agents of the state. After all, it's not like the state doesn't use its people to infiltrate movements. The ongoing scandalous spy cops tells us that it very much does. But I want to thank Gina, who left a comment on Wednesday's show and who really gets what I'm about. And I very much appreciate it. She said, this is one reason of many why I absolutely love this show. The fact is, we can disagree and accept and appreciate different opinions and still get along famously. What a fantastic first Wednesday show. I missed the live as I was cooking dinner, but have thoroughly enjoyed watching on catch up. But my point is this. We are earmarking Wednesday where I will bring on some, shall we say, unexpected guests, people who you might not normally associate with Wake Up. And that's good. Let's not be an echo chamber, people. Let's shake things up and not stop doing it until we have the right potent mixture. And that's my position on that. That's my position on that. Yes. When was Max removed from YouTube? When was that? Why do people want to see kind-hearted Sonia being mean? Well, I can be mean. You've seen me. You've seen me when I chase politicians, right? But that's in a completely different environment. But when I invite people onto the show, I want to hear what they're saying. I don't want to do a Piers Morgan on them. And I don't want to shout them down either. And I think that what he had to say was so very, very revealing. It was actually really amazing. And thank you for being here with us on Wednesday, and thank you for being here with us this morning. You know, I'm like people. I just shoot straight from the hip, don't I? No sides to me. Really awful to see what was going on in Munich yesterday. Still haven't fully got to the bottom of it. Obviously, there's the Munich Security Conference, which is starting today. And US Vice President J.D. Vance will be there. Zelensky from the Ukraine will be there. Zelensky's not happy at the moment because Trump has had more conversations with Putin than he's had with Zelensky. So Zelensky is very unhappy because he's so used over the last 2 years to being the front and center of everything and being beamed into everybody's parliaments and acting like Big Brother. But it would appear that it was actually a failed asylum seeker in Germany who drove into the crowds. It was a trade union demonstration, injuring at least 30 people, including children. There are updates coming in as I'm talking. At least 2 of the wounded in Munich were fighting for their lives. Really awful stuff. Zelensky is unelected, won't have elections, says Craig. Zelensky is an evil little puppet, says Peter. I think we have a theme here, but sending much healing to anybody who was attacked there. And of course, the headlines usual, and that is kind of car attack people in Munich. No, there was somebody driving that car, and we mustn't forget that. I mean, these, objects are not dangerous on their own, right? Knives, guns, and cars are not dangerous on their own. It takes dangerous people to be wielding them, to use them as weapons to create the problems. Right. On that note, I want to bring in my first guest. She's a corker. She's somebody I've admired for a very, very long time, and she's definitely worthy of decent admiration. Let's bring her in. Here she is. Wonderful Jayne Senior. Good morning, Jayne. How are you?
Good morning, Sonia. I'm fine, thank you, on this cold, freezing Friday morning.
Oh, you're up north, aren't you? You're up north.
I certainly am, yes. Yeah.
It's not too bad down here. I always like to go out in the garden before I start the show. And actually, it wasn't like it has been. I couldn't see any, breath in front of me this morning. So it's not too bad. But then I'm down south, Jayne. Slightly different. It's lovely to have you with us, Jayne. As you hear, I've admired you for a very long time. You're a whistleblower, you're an author, you're a protector of children. Thank God, because we need more people like you. You were managing a youth project set up by Rotherham Council, right? You were working with girls, young women at risk of sexual exploitation. You worked for well over a decade. I think it was about 14 years. You were trying to expose it. What were you seeing and observing when you were working with these young people?
I think just to put a little bit of context into the history of what happened in Rotherham, I began this journey in July 1999, where I was successful in applying for a role in managing a youth work project. So my background is youth work. And over the next 12 years, we worked with in excess of 2,000 children that were involved in child sexual exploitation, in being trafficked, in being tortured. And over that period of time, I wrote weekly reports, monthly, quarterly, yearly, met with a significant number of senior people that had the resources and the powers to actually do something. And as we know, following Alexis Jay's report that came out in 2014, where she gave a conservative estimate of 1,400. That's now increased as the National Crime Agency's got involved. That absolutely nothing was done, and those that had the power to do anything, as we sit here today in 2025, nobody has ever been held to account for what happened in my little town. And we are a little town, just over 250,000 people live in Rotherham. So statistically, I was asked to do a piece of work a few years ago, literally looking at the people that I could remember in a senior position. We have to remember this is not about social workers and police officers that may have had poor or good practice. This is them that could have done something to change. And I could identify over that 12-year period 84 people in a senior position that knew what was happening in my town.
84 in your small town, Jayne.
And that was either people that had sat around a table and met, or people that had actually received the evidence. And what you have to remember about our evidence, it was more intelligence. So the children would talk to us, tell us what were happening. We had an intelligence report that had been updated, developed by South Yorkshire Police. So it's not something we made up on back of a cigarette packet. It was an official document. And, you know, as things changed and kind of we started to identify patterns quite early in the process. And somebody that I know actually developed as a database. And our database didn't just contain the names of the children. We began to identify perpetrators, their names, their addresses, their dates of birth, properties of concern, places that we knew children were being taken to. So we would collate that, we would put the statistics, the information, put it into reports, and anybody that would listen to us, we would sit round a table and talk about what was happening in Rotherham and what were happening to our children. Another thing that we identified when I started in 1999, we kind of saw that the age, it was predominantly always girls. Up to about 2005, we began to identify some boys. And the ages were about 15 to 18. By 2007-8, the youngest child that we were working with was 9 years old.
Oh, Jayne, no. This is unbearable for me to hear. Like you, I'm very much involved in the safeguarding of children and the protection of children. To hear that is absolutely gutting. You wrote a book about your experience. Broken and Betrayed. For 14 years, you try to help girls from Rotherham. And it's quite astonishing the amount of roadblocks that were put in your way. Some people still insist to me, Jayne, that never happened, right? That it never happened, that the police weren't interested in taking this up. But that's just a lie, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to speak to them people. You know, I mean, I managed that project. I've got a team of youth workers. But I also would have a caseload and I would cover and I would work with children if I needed to, or if I was short-staffed. And I'd love those people to sit in front of me and, you know, deny the child that cried in my arms after being brutally raped and, you know, and all the other things that my staff had to experience. How we all have not come out of this with PTSD, I do not know.
Well, exactly. I hope you've been decently debriefed, though, and taken care of, Jayne, because it's a lot to take on board.
Never been offered a counselling session throughout all of it. Yeah, none of us were.
The thing is, my understanding is not only are you taking on board what these victims have endured, but you're also dealing with a system that refuses to acknowledge it exists. So you're hit from both sides. That is really psychologically problematic. You absolutely should have had counselling. It's outrageous. Paul says, well done, Jayne. The police should be doing what you were forced to do. And that's the point, isn't it? Is people like you, Jayne, were forced to do what the police should have been doing. And I want to know from you why you think those roadblocks exist. Was it a cultural issue? Was it cultural sensitivity?
The difficulty with this one is I will never actually 100% know what the truthful answer to this. All I can share with you is what I was told in meetings. So these children were consenting. How you consent to being abused, I will never know. They wouldn't make good witnesses on a stand. Do we know any child that ever would make a good witness? They were returning to their abusers. Of course they were returning to their abusers. They were absolutely petrified. If you're having a gun held to your head or being threatened or having petrol porn on, why would you not return to your abusers when you are 12, 13-year-old? The most common one that we were told is their stories were so far-fetched, they had to be lying. So rather than actually listen to actually, are they far-fetched or are they actually true? And these children are petrified. It was just stopped. I was also told I was causing issues with the human rights. not the human rights of the children, the human rights of the perpetrators. We were naming them without having any evidence. Also, I was told that if I continued reporting abuse, then actually I would be rocking the multicultural boat.
See, this is terrible. Every reason but protecting the child. Now, the thing is, obviously, you've worked with Alexis Jayne, you know, the work that you did with Andrew Norfolk in exposing this through the Times, which was fantastic. I have lots of criticism about mainstream legacy media, but that was brilliant work. It was brave work from both of you. That triggered the Alexis Jayne review, which in turn, Alexis Jayne was then chosen to head up the actual National Child Abuse Inquiry. And you were recently on a panel, weren't you?
I was, yeah.
Talk to us about that.
So following Alexis Jayne, it was a 7-year inquiry into child abuse across everywhere, the church. It wasn't, you know, just about Rotherham again. It was literally across the UK. And Alexis Jayne put 20 recommendations together, very good recommendations. Some of them do need a bit more work on them. None of them up to last week. Sorry, I just need to cough on you.
Go for it. Go for it. I'm very grateful Jane joined us, by the way, because if it was this time last week, you wouldn't have been able to hear her. So thank you, Jane. I'm glad you're a bit better today anyway. But yeah, so up to last week, you're saying?
None of them had actually been implemented. So last week, one was implemented. So the one that I wanted to speak about that is quite a passion for me. I mean, all of it is a passion, but the one that kind of resonates with me quite strongly, both personally and also trying to get answers for those that have been affected by this, both the victims, the survivors and family members, is mandatory reporting. Now, I'm not the expert on this. I'm not going to pretend to be, but I've got lived experience. Is if we fetch mandatory reporting in and we put some teeth in with it, so it's kind of a criminal offence to not actually report child abuse, especially on a significant scale like it was in Rotherham. My belief is we'd only have to put one chief constable, one director of children's services or one chief exec in front of a court of law for actually not doing their job, then actually we probably would see safeguarding and child protection change across UK, because would you want to be the next one?
Ooh, I mean, the thing is, why haven't those recommendations been implemented? We see these Tory ministers jumping up and down about the problems to do with Labour, and there's problems with all of them. But it's very opportunistic because they were in power and they were in a position to implement those recommendations, right?
Yeah, and I think all we've seen for weeks is politicians tearing chunks out of each other.
Yes.
Why is this political? Why is it not like cross-party? Why is not everybody standing up and actually fighting, not only for the children that this has affected historically, but what about our children, our grandchildren? What about those children in the future? Or what about the children today that this is happening to?
Yes. Now, you've just triggered me on something, right? And triggered is very much aware. There's loads of comments coming in all over the place, Jane, all on our social media, on our live stream here. And people really support what you're saying because it's so vital. But so the thing is, well, wait, what was it that you just said that triggered me? What did you just say prior to that?
Children today, future children.
That's exactly it, right? Is that, sorry, senile here. So that's exactly the point, Jane, is that everybody thinks this is a historic situation, but that's not what you're saying. You're saying this is still ongoing.
Absolutely. I can only use Rotherham as an example. I know it's happening everywhere, but you don't get 2 damning reports and abusers just think, well, we better not abuse any children anymore. We still see this. I currently manage a charity that works with children and also works with survivors of child sexual exploitation. And we're now seeing the next generation where we've got survivors whose children have become embroiled in this. And and the wheels of turning to actually get anybody to act, to listen. Is it better than what it was in the 2000s? Yes, absolutely. But is it working 100%? No, it isn't.
Do you, I mean, obviously, we're seeing a lot of kind of a foot shuffling going on within Labour at the moment. There are accusations that Labour have benefited from political votes as a consequence of this situation, about the fact that it's kind of like heavy Muslim, Pakistani, British, and Labour has benefited from those political votes by not doing anything about it. Do you think there's truth in that?
Do you know what, Sonia? I don't know. I was reading about this. When you'd rung me last week and asked if I'd come on the show, I spent most of the weekend kind of like reading and kind of seeing a lot of comments on this. But I wouldn't have oversight or insight, and I don't think anybody would share that with me anyway, because obviously I'd go public, or I'd speak about it.
I think this is what people like about you, is you're transparent. And the thing is that you're not afraid to take on any kind of organization. You're up against the IOPC. Talk to people about Operation Linden and the IOPC.
So Operation Linden was a 6-year investigation that actually came to fruition in June 2022. And Linden was a £6 million investigation where the IOPC were actually looking at police officers, just police officers, and kind of looking at who'd failed in their duty. And Linden is all about the junior cops, literally maybe up to sergeant. In 2019, I made the decision that actually Linden wouldn't go far enough. How can junior cops be they may be responsible for bad practice, but how can they be responsible for resourcing and taking on huge investigations? It was their bosses that were responsible for that. So, in 2018, I made a decision that I was actually going to do a complaint into the whole of the senior command team across South Yorkshire. For failing.
That takes some courage, mate. That really does.
For failing in their duty under direction and control to protect these children when they knew what was going on. What I never expected is what would come from that. So initially, I went through the channel of the police internal complaints department. It was turned down. I appealed. I was told very clearly if I continued complaining about senior cops, I would be made into a vexatious complainant. Yeah, I was doing statements weekly for Linden for the junior cops. So I appealed to the IOPC, who came back and basically told me that there was legislation that if I was deemed as a vexatious complainant, I could be looking at up to 2 years in prison. I kind of sat back and I spoke to my husband, who supported me throughout all of this, and thought, how can a youth worker and a charity manager be threatened with prison for complaining about senior cops? How can that possibly be right? And how can I be threatened with getting locked up for it? It just took me back to the same intimidation when I went to Andrew Norfolk. So I made a very difficult decision and I complained again. Eventually, in 2019, my complaint was upheld to be investigated, and it became known as Operation Amazon. And I was told that it would be done and dusted by Christmas. I just forgot to ask them which Christmas. And in June 2022, I was given a copy of that report, and it was fully upheld in its entirety.
Amy, I think you've already answered Amy's question. Amy wants to know if you've been threatened. Well, we've heard that you've been threatened by the state and the authorities. Have you ever been threatened by these perpetrators?
I have by one of them who, for some reason or other, thought sending pictures of his penis would intimidate me in any way. Left me a lot of voicemails and etc. I've had a few on Twitter. Basically, I've lied, I've made it all up, etc. I tend to ignore that, Sonia. I think way back it kind of upset me. Now I just think, well, I know my truth. I stand to my truth. And the one that was sending me pictures of his body parts did end up with an harassment order. But yeah, I've had all sorts of harassment.
I bet.
But I've had more harassment from people in positions of power than I have from any perpetrator. When Andrew did his first story that came out about Rotherham, I was kind of the secret whistleblower. I'd not actually exposed, it was me. And the first thing that Rotherham Council did was launch an investigation into who was the whistleblower. Now, why did they not launch an investigation into who are these people that are raping our children? I'll never know. And our local paper did a story about it, obviously, and the police made a comment that the whistleblower had caused significant damage to my town. And you think, wow.
This is gaslighting, Jayne. This is literally you put your livelihood, your life, your family, all of it on the line to do the right thing, right? And I understand where you're coming from. You and I have trodden quite similar paths in terms of exposing situations and the problems that come from it. It's basically gaslighting because so it's the absolute attack on whistleblower. We need to protect whistleblowers. That's your thing now, isn't it? We need to protect whistleblowers.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't roll out red carpets for whistleblowers. What we do is we vilify them in any way that we possibly could. You know, and I look back, you know, to when I was told that Operation Amazon had been fully upheld, and the emotions that I felt, because I thought at long last, these children that are now adults have got an answer that actually people did know what was happening. They weren't lying. You know, and they can stand up and say, you know, we were always telling the truth and this report proves we were. But there was a big but that came with that, Sonia. So they said I needed to be very proud. This had never been happened before. But if I put Amazon out in the public domain, those senior officers would sue me.
Can we just rewind on that just a second, Jayne? Because this sounds like it's impossible. Right. So they're telling you that senior police officers will sue you if you talk about an investigation that involved you. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the independent office that hold police officers to account actually are saying to me, if you put this report in the public domain, these senior officers that we've investigated will sue you.
Whoa.
So at the moment, I'm battling that in lots of different ways. I've got a couple of MPs that have been supporting me to kind of get that. People need to see that report, you know, and people need to be named and held to account.
And they don't want it. And this is the problem, is that what happens, unfortunately, Jayne, I don't need to tell you this, but oftentimes they're protecting, you know, the party or the business or the authority rather than caring about individuals who are harmed within that. You're very much about protecting the individuals, and that is a problem for them. And that's why you're literally taking on a mountain, and you've been doing it for a very long time. You're formidable. How do you manage this? How do you manage to stay so upbeat and optimistic given all of this raining down on you?
Just knowing it's the right thing to do. It's the morals that my parents gave me. It's the support I get from my family. And it's on behalf of every victim, be it child or adult, that needs an answer. You know, and I look back from reporting these senior officers, so not Lyndon, Amazon, being pulled up for having no tax when I was taxed, having no insurance when I was insured. And I remember
Just harassment.
buying a brand spanking new car, driving out of the showroom car park 1 mile down the road and being blue lighted for them to do vehicle checks. I had a riot van turn up at and I can evidence all this. I don't have to lie. I can evidence everything. I had a riot van turn up at my house at 10:30 at night to speak to my 17-year-old son at that time because he'd not posted a parcel.
I mean, people are already talking about fundraising for you, Jayne, if you should need it. I mean, we will definitely, if they come after you, we'll get behind you like nobody's business. That much I can reassure you, because I absolutely love what you do. You're literally the best of us. She's a national treasure, people. She's literally the best of us. So, Jayne, like moving forward, what can we actually do? Because it's ongoing. There's clearly a problem. There's all manner of obstructions. Yvette Cooper wants local inquiries. What do you think about that?
I really, really struggle with this one, and I kind of sit in the middle because I kind of look at it from the what's positive, what's negative. And if we were going to have a national inquiry, what I don't want, and I'm speaking for myself, it's personal, I don't want a national inquiry that's going to last 7 years and at the end of it gives me statistics, because that's kind of a waste of public money.
We've just had all that, haven't we, really?
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Local inquiries, are they going to be handpicked? Who's going to make the decision on where they're going to be? And I think we need to start with looking at these 20 recommendations. I'm quite happy to send you a copy if you've not got them, Sonia, and you can put them on your channel. But that's where we need to start. We need to kind of go back to them and kind of pick them up. Yes, some do want more work on them. Some will take longer. We can't just write law and legislation and implement it in a day. Last week, they changed the timeline very quickly to when you can come forward and claim compensation for child abuse. So if we can do something like that quite quickly, shall we get his finger out and start working on the others?
Yes, I'm totally for that. We'll support you 100%. Do you think it was helpful, the recent stuff to do with Elon Musk when he raised up the issue of so-called grooming gangs? Is that helpful?
I think the fact that he's brought it back to everybody's attention, because this has been an issue that's either in the public domain, then it goes away, then it comes out again, and it's kind of, shall we just forget about it because nobody's talking about it? Or shall we ask these children if we can just forget about what happened to them? Because if you're suffering with trauma and PTSD and everything else that's might have gone on, in the last 10, 15 years, then actually they deserve a voice. They deserve to be heard, and they deserve some justice, whatever that justice may look like. And obviously as well, probably not obviously, sorry, that's a wrong choice of word, but also if we look at it from a politician's point of view, and I'm not a politician and I don't want to be, let's look at the public person also. What is it costing? And I put some figures together, which I'll very quickly read out.
Please do. She gets it, Curly Cruz. She definitely does. We love Jayne.
And I call this the cost of doing nothing, because if you look in Rotherham, we did nothing. So actually by doing nothing, so some of these are absolutely spot on that I know, and some of them I've kind of Googled to get some figures. So the National Crime Agency are in Rotherham investigating historical crimes against children at a cost of £100 million plus. We've got Professor J and Dame Louise Casey, which is an unknown amount, but was probably quite a substantial one. Operation Linden was at a cost of £6 million. Rotherham Borough Council did 6 local investigations, £425,000. Police and Crime Commissioner did 2 investigations, £210,000.
Wow.
So if we look at how many people we've actually had in a courtroom, and this is where I've Googled this information, barristers to defend our perpetrators in court for approximately 437 days, just looking at what we've had up to now, is probably £2.5 million.
Oh my God.
1 year in prison costs approximately £40,000. Yeah, so we've had sentences of sorry, Sonia.
Not at all. You're doing brilliantly.
1,323 years of sentences. That would have cost us £52 million. So that's approximately £180 million. Remember, Rotherham is a small town. That has not taken into consideration all the investigations into me, the cost of the Home Affairs Select Committee,
Shocking.
yeah, the investment in support services in Rotherham. Think about the cost to the health service. Can you imagine how eye-watering that probably would be? GPs, appointments, medication, PTSD. What did Operation Amazon actually cost? And at the moment, we've paid out, well, these figures are up to 2022. We've paid out 662,000 in compensation, but we've spent £3.6 million defending.
Oh, don't, please don't. I hate that disparity. Oh,
So if you look at those figures, that's the cost of doing nothing in my little town.
so what is that roughly? A ballpark of that in total?
I would say that's probably quite significantly over £200 million.
The cost of doing nothing is approximately over £200 million. Wow, mind-blowing, Jayne. It's almost like that money was paid to stuff it down, right? To make people believe that, because that is the problem, isn't it, about a lot of these inquiries, is it's just to reassure the public that something is being done. But as you say, we don't want one that goes on 7 years. We have to be careful about local, because there may well be people who are compromised. So it is really problematic. So what is the solution, though? What is actually the solution? Because if anybody knows, it's you.
I think as well what we have to remember with so if Rotherham was part of a local inquiry, then actually what do we do about the perpetrators that cross borders or that came into Rotherham or went out of Rotherham to Sheffield, to Barnsley, Doncaster, Bradford, Telford, London? You know, how can we actually even oversee that?
Yeah.
So I think we need to start with these 20 recommendations. We do need to keep talking about this. We need to listen to what our survivors are saying. What do they want? We need to be investing in recovery services, because can you imagine if somebody said to me, here's 200, half of it, here's £100 million for counselling. Wow.
It could change everything, couldn't it?
It could change lives, change families.
What you do is literally phenomenal. You've just blown us away. Systems need tearing down, says Marcus, and it does. Where can we find Jayne to follow her? We must support her. What a great woman. Thank God for her, says June. Indeed, I will put a link in the description. You can find Jayne on X, formerly Twitter. But do read up more about this phenomenal woman. I'm so glad you joined us this morning. I knew you'd be phenomenal, and I knew that people would love you, because you deserve everything that's coming to you in all the right way. Right, you have really stored up your good karma, lady. You absolutely have, and I so appreciate what you've been prepared to do, because you were prepared to listen to these kids when nobody else would. When other people just said, you know, basically these are troubled individuals, you know, probably making up lies, you know, exaggerating for attention, and you got to the heart of it, and it's just amazing. Jayne, how have the families of the survivors been treated through all this? Healing the Silence asks.
Quite despicable. So following following Professor Alexis Jay's report into Rotherham, we did start to see the narrative change in the press. So we saw it was 1,400 white girls. No, it wasn't. We had other girls from other ethnicities that were involved in this. It became 1,400 children in care. Did we have children that were actually in the care system? Of course we did. Were all of them in the care? No, we worked with some parents that did everything they could to protect their children. And I remember one parent once saying to me, and how do you answer this? When you know your child has been abused and you go to the police and you go to social services and they turn their back on you, where do you go? Well, where do you go? because actually these are the people that are resourced through government to actually protect and safeguard children. So we've had a lot of truth about Rotherham, but we've also had some of the narrative changed along the way.
Right. And that's why we need to be speaking to people like you who are legit and who understand what's really gone on and are not here, because you're not here as a party political broadcast. That's the thing, is that you're literally just telling what you've seen and what you've observed and what you've been prepared to put your neck above the parapet for. And we really appreciate it. Jayne, thank you so much for joining us this morning. As you can tell from all the comments, I don't know if you can see them, but the support for you is literally phenomenal. Everybody's loving you here, as I knew they would. So thank you so much, everybody. This is Jayne Senior. She's the author of Broken and Betrayed. I'll put a link in the description. That will certainly give you an insight into her and the phenomenal work she's done. But you need to update it, Jayne. We want to know what is happening. I know. Is it too much to ask?
No, everybody says that. I look back and I think, wow, if I wrote a book now, it'd be, I don't even think they'd publish it. Yeah, it'd be dynamite. Yeah, but
it really would. But that's why we have to keep talking to you. Lovely to have you with us, everybody. This is, of course, as Mel said, a formidable woman. She is Jayne Senior, and we love her. Take good care of yourself, Jayne.
No,
lovely
thank
to have
you.
with us.
Have a good day, everybody, and a lovely weekend. Happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, yeah. Happy Valentine's Day to you too. Take care, darling. Lovely to see you.
All right, then. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
What a star. What a star. I love her. I love her so much. See, this is true grit. This is the kind of stuff that I'm proud. When I've never been particularly patriotic, that's not really where I'm coming from. But moments like this, I'm like, yes, good, strong Northern woman. I love it. I love it. Thanks, Jayne. We love her. She's a warrior, Marcuson. She's absolutely a warrior. And I think it's just so important. One of the reasons I wanted to bring her on is Jayne doesn't always get as much attention as she deserves, because she's not looking for attention. She's just doing the job. And so I'd said to her, I want to make people aware of who was actually right at the start of all of this, who was pushing against this when the police were trying to destroy you, were trying to shut it down. And that is Jayne Senior. And she was made an MBE for her work. And everybody knows how I feel oftentimes about those kind of establishment honors. But sometimes, just sometimes, they get it right. Right. Love that you're both on the right side of humanity. We are trying our best. Lovely human person, said Sid. Isn't she? Isn't she absolutely lovely? I'm going to bring in our next guest. And he's somebody who's very popular around here. Many people love hearing him. He's a writer. He's actually ex-British Army Sergeant Major, 25 years served. He's a author, and he's also something of a philosopher, but I'm not sure if he would describe himself as that, but I do. And I'm going to bring him to the stage right now. Here he is, Johnny McNeil, also known as Gaslighting Gilligan. Oh my God, you've had a big makeover, Johnny. What's going on? You look different.
Oh, I took my beard off and had my hair cut, and so I put on a lot of weight, and I kind of hid behind the beard and the long hair for a while.
You're looking fabulous. You look about 20.
Thanks very much.
That's all right. Great to
I
have
look
you.
about 20 and a philosopher. I'll come back here as much as you want.
Hey, do so. No, it's lovely to have you with us. Very seriously, I do always enjoy having you with us. Thank you. So I appreciate that, and I want you to be able to wax lyrical about the things that are kind of like interesting you, that are on your table. And so I asked you that, and I want to start off with one of the things you said, and you said some of Trump's announcements have been revealing. Expand on that for us.
Yeah, well, it's if you ever needed an indication that Israel is in fact and has always been a British-American satellite state in the Middle East, then Trump's announcement that we're just going to take Gaza, we won't need to pay for it, just obviously exposes that they've got every intention to go and occupy that place, that oil-rich region. But also you've got the announcement that they were going to kickstart a sovereign wealth fund. That was the pretext, a sovereign wealth fund for the US, to shield the US from any kind of future stock market crashes and all that sort of stuff. But that's never going to happen, because obviously they need to keep the disparity between rich and poor that exists today. And the way they were going to kickstart that was by purchasing 2 billion COVID vaccines. So, and the Orwellian, so people who have not seen me on your show before, when I use the terms left and right, I mean the Orwellian left and right, in that they are the same construct orchestrating between each other to bounce our emotions off one another. And those emotions in the moment always take control of us. And we end up in this
and
cycle.
That's what you're saying, isn't it? Because you'd mentioned that to me, is like it's all encompassed around this emotional capture, and it's potent though, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I've just obviously seen you with your last guest, Jayne Sr. And something she was saying about how, I don't remember exact words, but essentially, between Labour and the Tories, and and this child abuse scandal, always kick it down the road, and that's always been, that is our so-called democracy, in that they pretend to oppose each other, and in pretending to oppose each other, they protect each other, and they can continue with their agendas. But what they also do is emotionally weaponize these aspects along racial lines in order to politicize and create these distinct so-called left and right, sides, in order to continue keep us at each other's throats. Now, if you bear with me, I'm going to read you a quote here, and it was by Karl Rove, who was instrumental in the Iraq WMD line, obviously, to get over there and do that. And it was to a guy called Ron Siskins, who worked for the New York Times. Now, Ron Siskins had obviously got under Karl Rove's skin, because he knew it was a lie. He knew that the Iraq WMD pretext was a lie to get in there. And what we got here as well off of Karl Rove was he was basically showing off his power. He was expressing his knowledge and power. And this is where Jayne is as well, I think. It's called Jayne Sr., your last guest. It's called, we're all caught in it. People like you are still living in what we call the reality-based community. You believe that solutions emerge from your judicious study of discernible reality. But that's not the way the world works anymore. We're an empire now. We create our own reality, in which we create our own reality. And while you're studying that reality, we'll act again, creating new realities, which you can study too. And that's how things will sort out. We're history's actors, and you, all of you, will be left to just study what we do.
Right? Or the world's a stage.
The world's a stage, right? And anything which is used to emotionalize us and keep us at each other's throats. And the problem is, and one of the key mechanisms to get us to get on board with someone is to basically claim like a victimhood status. Once somebody, and Farage has done this, Trump's done this, being anti-establishment, a lot of the kind of transgender men going into, women's spaces do this. They claim a victimhood status in order to attempt to try and claim, it's like hijacking the moral high ground, because a lot, it's just a human trait to empathize with someone who's been victimized. But
it makes us easy to manipulate as well, though,
absolutely.
doesn't it? So we need to be more savvy about these things now. We should have learned already now, Johnny. Many of us should have.
Of course. And what I've come to understand is whoever you let own your emotions owns you.
Fact.
Right? And this is true whether it's in an abusive relationship with a partner, an abusive parent, or an abusive state, such as the one we are living in, because we respond the same way. When we're met, when an abused partner is met, with this kind of this sense that the partner is discarding, the abusive partner is in the process of discarding them, often the abused partner will not want to process that because they can't face the reality of it. They don't want to. But yet, the reality is happening. And the longer you leave that reality to unfold, the worse the pain gets when it actually comes to a head. And so this is where the gaslighting Gilligan aspect comes in, because love is blind. I'm not saying we love certain politicians or certain activists and that, but when you make an emotional investment in someone and you're inculcated into their indoctrination of their worldview, what tends to happen after that? What tends to happen is, by feeding us these bias confirmation lines, these narratives which we already believe, and combined with our ego defense responses, we tend to just ignore or aggressively defend that person or that person's viewpoint.
It's true. It's true.
I mean, you look at Farage recently. Farage is now recruiting. In fact, there's a Reform candidate who's just resigned from Reform itself, because Farage is actively recruiting from the Tories, right?
That's right. They're talking about this merger, aren't they?
Yeah. So they're no longer, because they never were, an anti-establishment party. Their Farage played the victim of the establishment in order to get people to now, in the early days, and he first appeared in BBC Question Time, when they drip fed us him, for him to create the right-wing rhetoric and that right-wing narrative in order for the Tories at the time to fill that rhetoric with fascist legislation, as we've seen, only for Labour to continue enforcing that. Then what we have to understand was Farage was their own Pied Piper all along to agitate the population, And so you still get people defending Trump, you still, despite, him just purchasing the 2 billion vaccines and, we're going to put boots on the ground in Gaza. And so you still get people defending them because they've made such an emotional investment for them. And for any side, Orwellian side, the strength of the feeling, which is often housed in a manufactured moral outrage. Don't get me wrong, there are genuine moral outrages, such as, Jayne Sr.'s just been talking about.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of manufactured outrage as well. And that strength of feeling is deemed proportionate to the truth, the Orwellian truth. And so because we're so easily led by our egos and the party's Pied Pipers on all sides and left and right, tribalism takes precedence over the truth. We allow our tribalism to own us, to own our emotions, to own our reality. And as such, because our feelings trump the facts, we're basically allowing or prioritizing our emotionally manipulated egos over our children's futures.
It sounds so easy when you break it down like that. But the problem is, of course, I mean, X, obviously formerly Twitter, is a perfect example, isn't it, of an emotional capture. How easy it is to quickly, for these kind of big accounts, these big, often anonymous accounts, to make these big statements, often not sourced, backed up by any information, get amplified by Elon Musk, and then suddenly everybody is caught in the swirl of that one particular issue. That's kind of what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's how easily,
it's whatever they throw. I mean, Steve Bannon was famous for saying, we'll throw the shit at the wall and see, we'll throw all the shit at the wall and see what sticks. And that's what's happening all the time. Karl Rove there, the quote I just read out, when you'll be dealing with one reality, you'll be studying one reality, and then we'll just create more. That's because this empire of actors that he's referring to on the left and right. Now, when I wrote Gaslighting Gilligan way back in 2017, I kind of processed it. I knew there had to be orchestration. There had to be. I knew this, and I'd come to terms with that fact. It was mind-blowing, right?
And you talk about that with your military experience. You were able to see it from that perspective, weren't you?
Absolutely, because I'd begun really around about 2003. We'd all been jabbed up again. All our equipment was on its way to Iraq again, and thankfully, in hindsight, my unit got stood down at the last minute and held in reserve. But we knew we were going. We knew we were going, and I could see Tony Blair at the dispatch box, basically saying it's not a done deal. War is not a done deal. if Saddam allows the weapons inspectors in, and of course, at the time I rationalised that, and that he was deceiving Saddam Hussein, you know, but as the you know, the realization that WMD never existed. So around about 2004, 2005, I had become totally disillusioned. And so it's not just Gaslighting Gilligan, the book, and the way I see the world. It's kind of brought me to this place. 2014, you know, during the Scottish independence referendum, it wasn't a referendum, it was a propaganda war. Now, you know, I'm a Scotsman. I was wholeheartedly on the side of the independence referendum, of course. But I witnessed a propaganda war. And it was equivalent to what had gone on to get, you know, the British and the US into Iraq. And then, of course, a couple of years later, you know, we had the Brexit referendum, and I believe it's also a propaganda war with a predetermined result, with Farage in there to drive predictable emotional behavioural responses, and then feed as a result that through their expectation management, we're able to deliver back to us. And so I think part of the point of the Scottish independence referendum was to give the world the impression that Scotland was a divided country. But also through the Brexit referendum was to give the world the impression that England specifically was a divided country that would require militarization. That's where Operation Yellowhammer was to come in off the back of hard Brexit, which they were initially going to try and start a war with Iran in 2017. I called that Op Fukuglashu. That's in the book, and I've also written a piece on that on its own. And so, there's a great quote from Carl Jung: synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see. Right.
That's so weird. You've just chosen that. My end comment on last Friday's show was about Carl Jung and about synchronicity. So there you go. That's synchronistic in its own right. But yes, absolutely. But you see, here's the thing, though, Johnny. I just want to throw this in, and that is, it can get to a stage where people are like, well, what is the point anymore then? If we can't trust this person, we can't trust that person. How do we actually move forward? Do you think that politics is just something that needs to be raised to the ground, our political arena? What do we do?
Aye. In a word, aye.
Yeah.
It's, how do we do that? Well, there's no point in trying to do it violently, because, you know, when you've got, because I mean, the British state itself is, again, I know this, the British military do not have the manpower to quell a civil uprising. Certainly not in England. Certainly not in England. They'd probably be quite happy to put boots in the ground themselves, although that would have other connotations, obviously, with Northern Ireland. You know, or what Northern Ireland certainly was and will be again if the British establishment get their way. The British military do not have the personnel to do that, certainly not in England, which is why they would need US support, which is what Operation Yellowhammer is about, is actually bringing in, although it doesn't say that on the Operation Yellowhammer document, but that's what it's about. It's putting boots, American boots on the ground in the UK, in global Brexit Britain. And you've just, I mean, on Twitter, you mentioned Twitter there. I watched an interview recently between Maajid Nawaz and Neil Oliver.
Okay.
Right?
Two British media
right?
commentators. Yeah.
Right. Both of them started out, you know, so Oliver pretending to be an archaeologist. He's not. He's a propagandist. He's not an archaeologist. He's not.
Oh, John is not a fan. Go on.
No, not at all. He's not a historian, right? He's not a historian. And his archaeology experience comes down to doing, you know, digs, but there's no actual kind of, you know, academic qualifications there, right? He's a British state propagandist, right? or WEF, Orwellian
Interesting you
propagandists,
say that.
right?
There'll be obviously people who disagree with you. I took issue with him because amongst all of this so-called anti-establishment rhetoric, he's telling the Queen, long may she reign over us during her anniversary. So I had a lot of problems with that because obviously she's key and centered to the establishment. But yes, go on, carry on.
Because he's playing a kind of martyr's role, you know. Again, once people act to behave like an underdog, you know, the victim in a situation, we're more inclined to. I mean, everybody loves an underdog, right? That's just something within us that we do. You know, if it's not your team that's playing and there's an underdog playing a bigger team, you want the underdog to win. That's what they do. They pretend to be. And you've got Majid Nawaz as well, who, you know, forged his career, his broadcast career in LBC. You know, London Broadcast Banking Corporation, sorry. You know, that's it's just another propaganda outlet. Most of it, like, I forget his bloody name. O'Brien. O'Brien's another one, you know. So these are propagandists. And you've got what Majid Nawaz was doing was essentially blinding us with science during that interview. And obviously, very informed on, you know, the smaller aspects of the Middle East, which is supposed to impress us. But what that interview was about was actually normalizing the concept or the prospect of a US occupation of Gaza. And the way he framed it was that the Palestinians would probably actually prefer the US to occupy Gaza than the Israelis. That was his framing.
So it's like a false dichotomy, isn't it,
Right.
in its own way that they're presenting? Okay, right.
Right. So you've already had Trump say that himself in the White House. But then you've got this kind of, you know, he's an outrider, he's a gatekeeper, you know, Nawaz, as is Oliver. And because they'll be right sometime further down the line, people will go, well, he predicted that, he said that, therefore he's worth following, he's worth listening to. But it's part of the same machine, like Farage was. So they put their own actors out in front of the narrative in order to keep control of the narratives.
The thing is,
does that make sense?
It makes sense. If you were saying this 20 years ago, people would struggle to believe it. But we've seen enough now, for goodness sake. They're releasing classified files which show quite clearly the murder of a president of the United States. We know that this is going on and has been going on for a very long time, that people are put in positions of power in a Pied Piper type position. I think you've talked about that before. They're like Pied Pipers, aren't they?
Absolutely. And you know, on the emotional side, it's emotions that drive us and drive our reality, even though we shouldn't, you know, we need to take account of that, and we shouldn't let that happen, because that's what's crippling us and keeping us in these toxic cycles. And so with the, and you know, and that's what the propaganda does. It targets our emotional brain, our limbic brain, to basically keep us in a state of irrational flux.
Yeah.
All right.
It works
and
so well.
It does.
It's brilliant. It's actually genius, isn't it? They did it to us throughout C19. It's really clever.
Yeah. And once we're fearful, once we're scared and disengaged from our rational process, our rational thinking brain, then we're so, again, our behaviors are so predictable, especially in groups and crowds. And so it's basically like a very quick 6-step: emotionalize, irrationalize, moralize, because moralizing a case for your viewpoint. This is why the right hijack the pedophilia. You know, the right-wing outriders hijack the pedophilia scandals and then to try and, you know, racialize it, turn it into colors of skin and politicize it.
True.
And if you do, but the full process is emotionalize, irrationalize, moralize, patriotize, militarize, and mobilize.
Whoa,
Okay.
a lot of eyes is there.
Yeah, a lot of eyes, right? And that all happens in the amalgamate aspect of militarized victimhood, I called it, in the Dark Triad model. So page 88 of the book, and my dark triad module for global fascism in Amalgamate. So that's seemingly bringing, you know, the construct together, Amalgamate, under, in UK, under the British construct, under in a militarized victimhood sense. And that's where that 6-step emotionalize, rationalize, normalize. Right. And part of patriotizing is through the MAGA and the Brexit. The pedo hunters, you get pedo hunters that are British patriots, reveal this pedophile. And so they patriotize that aspect. The militarization is what they've been trying to get via Ukraine, you know, with Russia via Ukraine, and then via Gaza to get Iran into that war, which has not happened. That's where they failed. And the mobilization aspect, and this one isn't popular, it won't be popular, but I don't care, because
that's the attitude.
It's precedent, it's historically precedented. So what we are, during mobilization or preceding mobilization, you had austerity, we have austerity, which is supposed to drive men in particular into destitution. But then you had patriotism, which is supposed to be able to give men their pride back and their purpose back, which would obviously see a Führer type figure coming along. And that's what we had in Trump, having Trump. Okay. But part of the recruitment process, and this echoes the 1929 stock crash, what else? The Versailles Treaty. This echoes all of that. And so as an additional push recruitment strategy, you've got something called misogynistic hate crime being bandied about in a minute.
Yes.
Okay? So misogynistic hate crime is, and if they could actually get it into law, its true aim is to drive men, specifically men who own the key to the streets in any country. It's the men who own the streets, who will own the streets. It's to drive men into societal and state subservience. Now, that in itself, having been preceded by the Me Too and the violence against women and girls narrative, which is set out to demonize and dehumanize all men as a class, in order that when that mobilization, when the militarization trigger came about, during the mobilization phase, what we would have is a reenactment of the white feather women, the suffragette, militant suffragette white feather women, who essentially walked up to men in the streets, pinned a white feather and humiliated them and shamed them into joining the military, into, you know, signing up. And what we've got is, and I've heard you yourself say, and I don't mean to hold your own words against you.
No, go on.
But you and I know nothing gets into media, nothing gets traction on social media unless there is a plan for it, unless it serves a purpose.
For sure,
right?
For sure. But the only reason I was just going to interrupt you is obviously there is a problem with the abuse and vulnerability of women and girls. We know that, absolutely. So how do we address that without demonizing all men? How do we do that?
We talk about it, and that's the thing. So I've yet to have a discussion, a long discussion, you know, about this aspect. Obviously the media don't talk about it. No. All the actors, all the players won't talk about it. All the actors and all the players won't even talk about Operation Yellowhammer. I mean, that is the most obvious. Back in 2018, if you're the party, or you know, the ruling class that's creating the havoc that's projected for hard Brexit, and yet you've got a militarization plan to put the military on the streets, that's a coup d'etat. That's not enforcing democracy.
No, absolutely. But here's the thing, Johnny, I just want to say this, and that is, I think Jan makes a good point, and that is, what is the alternative to, for example, a Brexit and a MAGA? Because there are no other alternative movements, are there, that people can get behind?
As you said earlier, we need to start again. We essentially need to start, but we need to try and do it as peaceably. So absolutely, I'm talking millions of people on the streets. Not just a near 500,000 for a Brexit protest, or literally millions of people on the streets. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately, it's just a reality of it. It has to come from England, because that's where the sheer numbers are in order to start bringing this down. if Scotstoun, we've seen what happened in Northern Ireland, what happens when Irish people take to the streets. The same will happen in Scotland, right? And it's only when it happens in England that the difference will be made. I mean, just mention Northern Ireland there. So another one recently. So this has gone under the radar in mainland Britain.
Oh yes, you mentioned this. Clifford McEwen, yeah.
Clifford McEwen, right? So in the guise of a UVF man, right, also volunteer law enforcement, it's just been revealed. It's just been publicly admitted, basically, and he's just one of a raft of, and so he was actually special branch, and he's murdered at least 10 Catholics during the Troubles. He was actually special branch, working for the British state. Again, one of a raft. Now, I remember you talking a wee while back about Operation Gladio to one of your contributors.
Yeah.
And I actually mentioned on TNT with Rick Munn last year that I believe that the Troubles were in essence a very British Operation Gladio.
Really?
Yeah, because the British condition was waning, and the civil rights, the Catholic civil rights movement were actually beginning to gain traction. So I utterly believe, again, ex-British military, ex-Sargent Major, 25 years served. I am utterly convinced that the British state deliberately started the Troubles in part to revitalise, the British condition within the Northern Ireland and essentially militarise.
Wow, absolutely, Matt. Johnny, I have to let you go. But before you go, just leave us with a word of wisdom. What should we be looking out for at this stage? We need to be more alert, don't we?
The actors, the synchronicity of the actors. Look at what's not being revealed. Look at what's not being said, as well as, obviously, instead of getting taken along by your emotions and literally dragged by your emotions, take a deep breath. Look at them as an orchestra that are bouncing our emotions from one side to another, and understand it's all theatre.
It's all theatre, people. Please remember that. It's lovely to have you with us this morning, Johnny McNeil, Gaslighting Gilligan. See, I told you were a bit of a philosopher, a wise man of letters. We appreciate you very much.
We caught a lot of things, but not that.
But you like it, though. I know you do. I can see that smile on your face. You agree, Johnny, says Sid. Absolute pleasure to have you with us, Johnny. And thank you for spending this time to unpack all of that. It's heavy stuff, but we want to know about it. Everybody, Johnny McNeil, have a lovely weekend. Take good care of yourself. Look forward to seeing you soon on Wake Up.
Very welcome. Thank you, Sonia. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Johnny. Take care. I do enjoy talking with him. I mean, he's one of those people that you can just kind of hand him the mic and let him go. And yes, Ian, cool guest. And thank you. And of course, some disagreements there. I get it. It's not a problem. We're allowed to do that around here. Remember, we are allowed to do that around here. Right. Let me move on to some of the things that I've found and discovered. Interesting things, right? We have such brilliant commentators around here. And thank you to Free Steamer, who wrote in the live chat last week when I was talking about how much I like Apple products. Don't hate me, people, don't hate me. But he wrote this. Apple sold their first computer for $666. And I thought that cannot be right. It cannot be right. It would be too much, right? But lo and behold, it was actually right. Apple did indeed sell its first computer, the Apple I, for $666.66 in July 1976. The price was chosen. Steve Wozniak said, Apple's co-founder, said he liked repeating digits. But why 666 though, Steve? Right? Yeah, esoteric numerology, Sully. Exactly. We do. Proper freedom of speech. Cherish it. Let's have it, right? Let's bring it on. And then I encountered another weird 666 after that. You know how sometimes when you see something and then you see it again, right? I wonder if I've got that headline available that I'd like to bring up for you, because lo and behold, I thought this was really interesting. Let me just try and bring this in. Really enjoyed listening to Johnny. He's such a good talker. Have I got this somewhere? I hope where is it? Where's it gone? Don't disappear. Here it is. It's very interesting, right? So basically, they are now talking about how there are 6 billion of benefits are unclaimed every year in the UK and how people miss out, right? So on the one hand, they're like, we've got to cut the benefits bill. And on the other, there's 6 million that have gone unclaimed. But there's more. The Daily Mail headline said, look at this. Check this out, people, right? All the world's a stage. The Daily Mail headline says, now our money experts tell exactly what you need to do to get 6,600 a year more. So that's 666. Unclaimed benefits. What's that? 666 watching now. Stop that. Drumstick, stop that. He actually wanted 777 but wasn't allowed to, says Cavan. What? Synchronicity. It is, Michelle. It is absolute synchronicity. But I was like, okay, that's interesting. That's curious. I like things that are curious. I really like things that are curious. And I'll tell you what's not curious, and we're all getting absolutely sick of it, is the unnecessary attacks on people that we are witnessing, that we are seeing, and has to stop. And I'm talking having watched the daughter of Sir David Amess, and it just was really heartbreaking to listen to her. Her father was murdered. Let me just get all the details in front of me. I like to know exactly what I'm talking about here with you. I'm sure you've seen the interview. She's been interviewed by many people and many platforms, including Sky and GB News, etc. Have I lost what I wanted to say about that? Because it's really horrible. I'm sure many people will remember it. Sir David Amess had been in the British Parliament for, I think it was like 40 years, a very long-serving member of Parliament. Now, I don't need to tell you, thank you, Sticky Marks. I don't need to tell you how much I distrust politicians. I mean, that's a fact, right? That's nothing new. Nobody will be shocked to hear that. Okay. But Sir David's daughter, Katie, as I say, she's been talking all across various mediums and some background. On the 15th of October, 2021, Sir David Amess is a British Conservative politician, was fatally stabbed at a constituency surgery at the Belfairs Methodist Church Hall in Leigh-on-Sea in Essex. His killer was Ali Harbi Ali, a British Islamic State sympathizer who was arrested at the scene, actually waited for the police to arrive. In April 2022, Ali was convicted of murder and the preparation of terrorist acts. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order. But of course, that is a grieving, broken family that is left behind, having to deal with this. It reminds me again of what's gone on in Munich yesterday. And we have to remember it. We cannot forget it because there's a problem. MB says it's a psyop, and we can't rule those things out either. But I'm going to tell it like it's been told. Because what I think is interesting, and a lot of our viewers have contacted me about it, is that Kate Amess was talking about how she had been made to sign something akin to an NDA under threat of imprisonment or lawsuit. That's weird. And that's part of a learning review. And she wants a full and open public inquiry into it. She said, my father was an elected politician for 40 years. Why are we having to fight them tooth and nail? Yvette Cooper, who's the Home Secretary, tried to claim it was not for her as it happened when she wasn't the Home Secretary. But that's ridiculous, Yvette Cooper. Because Home Secretaries routinely take on things that have happened in the past when they weren't Home Secretary. So we know that's a cop-out. And this is where I think it gets interesting for our viewers. Because whether it's a psyop, whether it's real or whatever it is, right? There are comparisons and parallels to be drawn with what's gone on in Southport recently, obviously with child murderer Axel Ruda Cabana. And it's the same kind of stuff that is existing around it, where the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister are being very coy. And the problem is both Axel Ruda Cabana and Ali Harbi Ali both went through the kind of PREVENT, which is supposed to be anti-terrorism prevention, where both went through that system and nothing happened. Lights are on, but nobody's in, says George. And online, there is a lawyer's blog, and the proof is undeniable. He and Huntley, oh my God, they're talking about Ian Huntley. Whole other story. But it was interesting listening to Kate Amess because this whole idea that she had been forced to see something. So she said that she'd seen a report which talked about how her father's killer had been taken to McDonald's for a little chat and then signed off. Right? She said, I was made to sign a document to say I would never tell anybody what was in it. This is unbelievable. And the only reason that it's been released today is because of the terrible atrocity that happened in Southport. Kate Amess says that. right? So there are correlations to be drawn between what went on in Southport, what went on with David Amess, and the whole political cover-up of it. There's something there. There's something there, and I think that's important to highlight that. And she was actually asked whether there could be joint inquiries because of the parallels between the two situations, and she said, but what would that do? Would you have an inquiry which looked at all of these cases together? Because she said there's so many other people who have fallen through this terrorist net. And so she said the problem is that Prevent have failed so many, and that is a reality, isn't it? Mind blown. Count of Jermaine's mind is blown. The world is a stage and politics is pantomime, says Total Nutter. Well, I mean, you're not going to get a lot of disagreement from me on that, are you? You know that. You know that indeed. So, you know, we shall see. I think that the thing is, what was also interesting, of course, was that the David Amess's murderer actually went so far as to mock Prevent in court. Like they think is a laughing matter. They do. People's pantomime. Nothing surprises me anymore. The likes are really no. Not being a Karen, but we've had a good time, says Hush. Yes, please. Knife crime is real. Eric, it's very real. It's very real. And it is so sad because I believe that this is a grieving family. The thing about PSYOPs is it doesn't necessarily mean it's been a fabricated situation. It means that the state has kind of arisen to use it one way or another. Ian calls it Toilet Britain. Lat said, if Prevent has 40,000 under watch, how many is the real number? Right. Mad Max, that's an excellent point. Not called like, oh, it's just that's wait, what's going on? Wait, what did you just say? It's not called Acts of Parliament for nothing. And I have to agree. 666 watching now. I think you'll find it's more. Let me have a little look on our calculator, folks. I can look in the background at analytics. Let me have a look. And we want likes, people. We want likes. Oh, what is it telling me? I don't know what it's telling me. And it is telling me that 2,202 views on YouTube, right? And we need more likes because my mods are not happy. And neither are some of our viewers, right? 666 watching, apparently. That's interesting. On YT was 666 a few seconds ago. Was it when I was talking about 666? That's a bit scary. Crazy Bunny said it's been stuck. It's been stuck. Right. Let me move on. I have got more to cover before the end of the show today, and I don't want to run behind on this. I want to talk about mass media propaganda. Mass media propaganda. Anybody seen the new Netflix offering, Apple Cider Vinegar? It's the story of Instagram scammer Belle Gibson. And honestly, it's a good basis for a story, but Netflix have used it for propaganda purposes and to push mainstream approaches to cancer, including deeply problematic ones, while also spotlighting how awful alternative cancer treatments are. It did a thorough job of seeking to persuade the viewer that chemo is good and alternative is bad, very, very bad, in fact, deathly bad. They didn't choose to talk in detail about the impact of chemo, though, because, well, they wouldn't, because if they did, then that would mess with the propaganda narrative of the 5-part series. And I have to be careful because my film, The Business of Cancer, was taken down by YouTube. But fair to say, the theme of apple cider vinegar was not so much about what a horrible, disgusting, reprehensible scammer Isabel Belle Gibson was, and probably still is by all accounts, but to focus on pressing allopathic mainstream cancer treatments while scaring the pants off people from exploring elsewhere should they ever need to. The Belle Gibson story is strong on its own. It doesn't need an agenda. The story of a person who hoaxed people on Instagram by her fake posts while claiming to have brain cancer is strong enough. You shouldn't need to dress it up. The fact that she made a ton of money, had major deals, and became known as the Queen Bee of wellness was not an inspiration at all, right? She was treated as an inspiration, but she wasn't. All of this is a great story. She was a heartless hoaxer. She duped genuine cancer sufferers with her web of lies. This is a brilliant story. And the whole thing is billed as a true-ish story based on a lie. It dramatizes the birth of the influencer industry. Again, a great story because a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. But what they did was they used these two women side by side. So you had the fake hoaxer, Belle Gibson, and they put her side by side with Jess, who was actually a wellness blogger. And they've renamed Jess as Miller in the story. Jess is now dead, another Instagram influencer. And there's many conflicting accounts about Jess, but Jess did truly have cancer. She had a blog called The Wellness Warrior. And in 2010, she opted out of conventional medicine and explored Gerson therapy. And Belle, at round about the same time, was claiming that she had undergone conventional cancer treatments, including chemotherapy and radiotherapy. And then she abandoned it. And she said that her clean eating approach was changing everything. But Jess was actually genuinely cancer stricken. She was. And her family, in a statement at the time of her death, said that they'd consulted oncologists and they refute the suggestion that her chances of survival would have increased if she had followed conventional medicine or had her cancerous arm amputated. But the problem is that Netflix are seeking to put against someone who genuinely strived to deal with cancer in an alternative way against a scammer. And it's terrible. And the family are not happy because the memory of Jess is so much better than what Netflix want to rebrand her essentially as an idiot who followed the alternative path and died as a consequence of it. But that is not what the family is saying. That is not what her family is saying. Rest in peace, all cancer victims. That crap is everywhere. Absolutely it is. Awful human being. But NF didn't need to condemn natural medicines. What was that? I'm confused. Oh, yeah, Netflix. Sorry, NF. Yes, they went for it. But there was another propaganda as well. And now this one upsets me. I've been a major fan of Unforgotten. Unforgotten is an ITV drama. I've watched the entire series 1 to 6, including this current one. However, this one is unrecognizable to me. The stench of toxic agendas is overpowering. I've watched every 36 episodes of Unforgotten over the years, and this is absolutely the worst of the lot. The idea is a police team investigate bodies that have been hidden for years. It's great drama and usually supremely written by author Chris Lang, but I don't know what happened this time, but it's gone horribly, transparently wrong. So what happens is a spine is dredged out of an East London marsh. A new case begins for Jess and Sonny's team at Bishop Street CID. And then what you have are all these potential suspects. And oh my goodness, the stereotypes that you did, Katie. You warned me last week, which is why I sat down to watch it, because there were a number of people who had contacted me and said, oh, you've got to watch it, because I've said before how much I love that. I love Unforgotten. Couldn't wait for this 6th series to come. But the stereotypes, one of the suspects was an incel, hated women, autistic, dangerous, a conspiracy theorist, lived in a filthy house, right? They use narratives like anti-vaxxer about him, right? Then there was suspect 2, a reporter portrayed as someone essentially working for GB News and actually telling the truth about climate change, only she pretends it isn't. She pretends that when she's calling out the climate change and net zero, when behind the scenes, she's like, I don't believe any of that. I don't believe any of that. So there's that as well. Then you have a lecturer at a London university who ends up being disciplined for giving a book to an outraged and insufferably entitled middle-class white protester. The book had a provocative title because the author had made it so. Nonetheless, the student was offended and the lecturer was put through hell by both her direct boss and the union. After questioning the problems with the student's reaction, the lecturer predictably apologizes and makes it seem like this is the reasonable thing to do rather than challenge the nonsense of somebody being offended by a book title. This is progress in a begging bowl. It's horrible. And then the final suspect is a gay immigrant. And some may say that the writers of ITV are capturing a period in time, but they're doing more than that. They are pushing numerous agendas, including the demonization of those who ask questions. And like ITV, wokeness in universities is a good thing, they're telling us. And all lecturers should stop being stuffy old fuddy-duddies and rise to the challenge of a new dawn where the world is inverted and overly sensitive. We're told all immigrants are genuine, escaping oppression and only here for peace and love, and anyone questioning otherwise is a wicked, evil bigot. The series was a massive disappointment for me, but also a shambles of a storyline. It was all over the place. It lacked the earlier compelling energy of the previous shows, because that is what propaganda does. And this is the problem with these people. The writers and the bosses were so busy shoehorning every known virtue signaling issue into the script. There was no room left over for a decent plot. I have loved this series. I did not love this one. It was disappointing. But more than that, and this covers both apple cider vinegar and Unforgotten, I object to mass propaganda over your tea, over your supper, because we keep finding predators within our midst while they've got us focused on all manner of nonsense, their agendas. But let's not mention that, because that would not be very PC, would it? ITV and Netflix. Bad stuff. I don't like it. Ian hasn't missed watching BBC or Channel 4 propaganda for years. Flat round. It feels all uphill to me. Hush, it's not all uphill. It's far from uphill. Although I have to say, LL Cool J, oh my God, I interviewed him when I was a music journalist, right? What sellout? I have a question. Who has disappointed you? What person, actor, singer, whatever, have you previously supported and now can't because of how they were prepared to sell their souls for a few shekels? Feel free to tell me. I'll start. LL Cool J. Yes, indeed. At the Super Bowl this week, to the sound of LL Cool J rapping his huge hit, Mama Said Knock You Out, we get a highly emotive advert, that emotional capture that Johnny was talking about earlier, with a child who has triumphed over cancer. Here it is. Here's the child who's triumphed over cancer. He's heading back home. This is propaganda, and LL should be ashamed of himself. He claims his support of Pfizer, and this is due to his wife being diagnosed with the big C, and together they've teamed up with Pfizer for early detection. As I say, I interviewed LL. In fact, I'm going to show you the image if I've got it available to show you. But here's what's interesting is, I don't know if you can see this on the screen, but it says Pfizer is fighting 8 cancer breakthroughs by 2030. There's that year again. There's that year again. So disappointing when people do this. Stephen is disappointed by Paul McCartney. Stella is disappointed by Neil Young. No, not all history is a lie. No, it isn't. I refuse to believe that. Stella is disappointed by Bruce Springsteen. I was also disappointed by Pink as well for pushing the jab. And Dolly Parton. I love Dolly Parton. I was so disappointed by her. So disappointed. I mean, you know, oh, no, I can't actually find my LL Cool J picture, but that's all right. I don't need to, do I? No, I don't need to. You've got the taste of it now. But yeah, I'd interviewed him before. We had great pictures taken by brilliant photographer Ray Burmeston, star photographer Ray Burmeston. But now he's on the money train, as they so often are. And I noticed in the comments that Donald had said, I live in New York, USA, and want to let you guys know there's been a tuberculosis outbreak in the United States that is getting no media attention across the country. It started in Kansas, but I haven't heard any updates since. I looked into it, Donald, I did. And so it seems that since 2020, the United States has actually seen an increase in reported TB cases surpassing pre-COVID-19 levels. And that's according to the US Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, this could well be one of those stories that they're hyping up in order to be able to bring in a fresh new cure, right? But New Jersey, Donald, you're absolutely right. New Jersey appears to be at the epicenter of this. Okay, my research actually said was that New Jersey is experiencing a similar increase in cases and has a TB incidence rate above the national average in America. At the moment, they're saying that they're not considering it widespread, but we shall see, because there was that announcement. I don't know if you remember in November about TB. So it's very interesting, isn't it, that they're now talking about how there is this significant increase. But I did look into it, and Rupert said more tests, more cases. Yeah, the father of my daughter had TB when I was actually pregnant, and it was not great. It was not great. And I'm wondering really how much of what I've been able to source on this is real or on message. Are we being alerted to this for a reason? I think we need to know. And also what's interesting, I think this is valuable, and that is since 2010, the majority of reported TB cases in the US occur among non-US born persons. That is the majority. The CDC estimates that up to 13 million people in the US have inactive TB. We shall see. Turpentine, right? They can shove the next virus where the sun don't shine, says Ian. Right, where the sun don't shine and the birds don't sing. Let's look at something altogether more beautiful. Check this out, people. Look at that. This is where Mrs. Pirate, who's often in our comments, watched Wednesday's Wake Up. Yes, she is indeed a real person. I met her and her lovely partner in real life when we all went to the Women's Pond in Hampstead, London. Excuse me, to protest at men claiming to be women going there. I filmed them. They're actually part of my trans doc, but this is wonderful. This is from her boat. How lovely is that? I love this crazy bunny. I love it. I love it. Kath, I love it. That is a place to be. Thank you for sending that, Mrs. Pirate. Absolutely love it. You're a star. That looks so cozy. Drumstick is also disappointed in Joni Mitchell. Jan, isn't it a lovely boat? Essie Mack, I kind of covered that on Monday. On Wednesday. Why is Starmer taking an HIV test? Oh, here we go. Very easy to avoid. It's a lot of pushing, isn't there? It's nudging. It's awesome, Mrs. Pirate. Right. On Wednesday, I launched a new feature to the show, the 1 minute rant, and lovely Deborah was not happy. She wrote, "Dear Sonia, love your shows and hope you don't mind, but yikes. Your comment about a 1 minute rant had me thinking of Orwell's 2 Minutes of Hate." And I had not looked at it like that, Deborah, until I read your email. And I was like, oh, she's right. And so, but what she said was, I'd so much more prefer to hear how we could help each other, a kind deed for a stranger day. It doesn't have to be much, but it really could be a lifesaver for someone. A door opened, a smile, a quick chat. We must never lose sight of how even a small act of kindness can resonate and help us all as we go forward. Raise those vibes. Well, I immediately responded to Debbie because for some reason that email just shot up at me. And that doesn't happen with my emails always, but hers did. And the end comment today is about raising your vibration, right? It's about raising your vibration. But I take Deborah's point, but the original idea was actually, do you have something you want to get off your chest? Because I receive so many messages from people and they're just angry about one thing or another. And I always think we should be able to use this in some way that they can be able to express this. I can platform this. So we decided a 1 minute. What about both features? Yes, lenticular cloud. Exactly that. Bring the balance. Love both options. Absolutely. So do feel free to send me not only 1 minute of whatever you want to get off your chest, but 1 minute or less. It always has to be less than the 1 minute. And that was why it's really about a description rather than the title, the 1 minute rant. So, but 1 minute of love or 1 minute of something you have to get off your chest. Sonia, Debbie has a point. But sometimes we need to rant to a friend. We do. So it's all good. I think it's a great idea. I love it. I love both of them. Let's do both of them. So today's is actually somebody that we know, somebody we know around here. She's our Zoe, right? And I should say that our Zoe and our Shin, our two mods, they have a Synchronized Souls podcast tomorrow, live music and chat. Yes, let's go. Let's go with this Scottish rant. But we're going to put a link in the description to, can you define a woman? Oh, they're talking. Wait, what's going on? Right, let's listen to Zoe. So basically, Zoe's idea is about spiritual grifters. Let's hope this plays correctly. Let's do this.
Now, I am not one to judge, but it is really getting to me the amount of so-called spiritual healers that are just fake. From faces full of Botox and fillers claiming to be authentic to selling courses for thousands and thousands of pounds. You can't banish negativity by adding to your cart. A true spiritual path isn't all love and light and TikTok dances. You can't buy spiritualism, and to be honest, all that you need is within you already. I know that a lot of vulnerable people are basically getting robbed with these so-called charlatans, and it really actually hurts my heart. I've seen healers jump from making groovy tune videos in camper vans to then living in multi-million-dollar properties and the ego soaring, even making songs saying you're all sitting in your basement paying for this life as she sits on like her third brand new car. So please just use discernment, people, when seeking spiritual guidance, and you would receive a lot more advice and guidance sitting in silence in your own home than filling your cart full of unethically sourced crystals and toxic potions from toxic people.
How much do we love that? See, I definitely think there is a place for us to be able to hear what people need to get off their chest. And but I totally agree with Deborah as well. I love the idea of balance. So let's bring it, people. Absolutely brilliant. And this is what's so wonderful about this is a very organic process, right? There's no big people managing me or anything like that. And what we have is kind of me in front of the camera, you wonderful people who support me, and then all these wonderful suggestions that come forward. It's awesome. Hoke said, well said, Zoe. Can't beat a Scottish rant. Scots are the best, straight to the point. I love it. Absolutely. Of course, we understood it, sausage. Absolutely. Vanessa loves it too. I love it too. So as I say, tomorrow, Synchronized Souls podcast. Please, ladies, get a link in the live chat as well, as we'll put it in the description. And I loved that 1 minute rant. Please do send me your under a minute, what you love, what you appreciate about this world, or what you want to get off your chest. Either is great. Thanks, Deborah, for bringing some balance to this. Very much appreciate that. And thank you as ever to this week's donators, Stuart, Philip, Christine, Claire, and Stanley, the dog, who is actually a girl. We showed Stanley last week, and I commented on the interesting spelling of Stanley's name, Stanleigh. Stanley is a girl dog. And thank you to Jenny and Catherine and Peter and Ernest and Bijan and Mervyn. And if you have donated and I haven't mentioned you, forgive me. I appreciate you all, including my glorious, gorgeous patrons at Patreon. I appreciate all support, be that guest suggestions or likes, shares and subscribes. And I appreciate every single penny you put into Wake Up, because it enables us to grow. Thank you so much. I really do truly appreciate it. Thank you. I do appreciate it. Right. The importance of keeping your vibe up. And I'm going to bring Sally's beautiful mindful thoughts illustration to the stage. Oops, still got Go Zoe on the screen. Oh, that dog is still gorgeous. Yeah, absolutely. That's Stanley. Yes. Blessings and many thanks. Thank you, Curly Crew. Appreciate that. Right. Let's talk about the importance of keeping your vibe up. There's a lot of David and Debbie Downers out there, right? Crabbers in a bucket mentality, where as soon as you start to rise to the top, they want to bring you down. They figure they don't have the wherewithal or the ability to succeed, so they don't want anyone else to either. But here's my thing. Don't allow anyone to rain on your parade. Tell them to take their freaking showers somewhere else. You have your own umbrella if need be. But right now, you don't need to listen to Debbie or David Downers, because we are talking about the importance of keeping your vibration up. I've said it before, but I feel absolutely compelled to tell this story again. When I was a breakfast show presenter on Today's News Talk, one of the directors told me, not to say things like, in quotes, raise your vibrations. To him, a throwback to the 60s and 70s, the word vibration had hippie connotations that he didn't like, and he didn't want me spreading all over his platform. But I grew up in a hippie family, and it was an absurd suggestion to me. Images thrown at us daily are designed to make us question who we are and whether we need that new item of clothing or that cosmetic procedure or that new car or new whatever to make us complete. That's the corporate world, which is notoriously vibeless, which is why they have to do marketing. They are selling inauthentic, soulless products and based on the notion that people will buy them to feel better about themselves. But what if you could feel better about yourself just by being you? Just by raising your own vibration? Because my theory is, if you take care of your core vibe, you won't need those kind of trappings to feel $1 million. You will feel $1 million without the price tag. Actively working on raising your vibration can assist all manner of issues, including depression and sickness. It's a scientific fact that a positive outlook has mostly positive outcomes, not unrealistic outcomes, but that's a whole other story. And the thing about low vibration is all the things that we loathe and hate actually is hateful, it's divisive. But what can we do to change anything if you're stuck in a cycle of negative thinking? Well, it's simple, really, and that is take time out. Take a moment out to smell the flowers, to look at, to spend time with loved ones, to talk to a friend, to write down a list of your achievements. And honestly, if you have depression, part on your list of achievement could be getting out of bed this morning and making my bed. And it's an achievement. If it's an achievement to you, it's an achievement. And don't let anybody tell you any different. The thing is, when our vibration is low, that's when we're easily manipulated. I think we've shown today on this show how easily we are manipulated continually, decade after decade after decade. But they can't do it so easily when our vibrations are all lifted up. And also, I say this often, and that is do all you can to get out in nature. Nature is a healer. Yes, absolutely. What's that? Oh, sorry. What's that? Having a great hope for the future is the best thing ever. I make my bed once a month at least, says Ian. Laughter. Ian, laughter is a sensational medicine. I mean, if I haven't had a laugh a day, then I'll seek out videos that make me laugh. But generally, I think I've said this before, and that is our psycho dog makes me laugh every day. She's so funny. Our dog is so funny. Like, even just playing ball with her, she's funny. Just the expression on her face, the way she reacts, it's wonderful. And also stroking dogs is really healing, really vibration. Actually, stroking any animals is actually scientifically proven to be very healing. So all of that is good. And laughter is magnificent, and we love it. Yes, thank you, Howard. I really appreciate that, and I'm grateful to you too. I think it's easier to say who hasn't sold out. No, absolutely. Animals make me happy and keep me grounded, said Crazy Bunny. Indeed, indeed, indeed. And I want to give you a couple of quotes, and that is, one positive thought produces millions of positive vibrations. John Coltrane said that, and we cannot underestimate that point. It's a really valuable point, because our minds are incapable of holding two thoughts at once. So if it's going to hold a thought, make it a positive one, and you will see a marked change in yourself. You need to elevate your vibrations, not your expectations, right? The universe, as we are told, dances to the tune of grateful hearts. And I want to end on this quote, and I can't see who it's written by, so please forgive me. And that is, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Absolutely. Positive thoughts, electrical impulse, and horses, says Rachel. Indeed. Lots of love to you all, darling people. I will see you again on Monday. Of course, been a very, very busy week for us around here. And I've enjoyed it. Actually, I've enjoyed this new addition to Wake Up, and onwards and upwards.
Time to wake up with Sonia Poulton.
A sensational weekend. Thank you to our two wonderful mods. Thank you for being here today. Thank you to everybody watching and listening on Catch Up. I love you to bits, to the sky and back again. See you Monday. Take good care of yourself, people. Love you.